Hello and welcome in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Forecast. I'm your host, Trevor Scott, joined by my co-host, Matt Giraldi.
What's going on, guys?
And we are back on the mic to go over quarterback starts and sits for your Week 7 matchups. Very excited about this week. There's a lot going on. We got a new quarterback in the mix with Maye. And so without further ado, let's get into the QB1s. Starting off with your QB1 to start is Sam Darnold. He's back off a bye, and I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so coming off the bye, obviously Darnold had a rough performance against the Jets, putting up 4 fantasy points. Although they did get the win, he's got the Lions this week, who just held Dak to 3 fantasy points. So I understand how these two things could lead to some hesitation in starting Darnold. Vikings are slight favorites in this game that has a very high projected over-under. We don't know if Aaron Jones will be back, but even if he is, he may not be fully healthy. They may limit his touches, which could lead to Darnold having to throw it a little bit more. Not to mention the Lions are much better against the run than they are the pass. And of course, there's a chance that he gets TJ Hawkinson back in this game. So if you are in a 1 QB league and you've got, say, someone like Patrick Mahomes as your starter, there is a chance that Darnold is available on the waiver wire just with having so many quarterbacks available in 1 QB leagues, and then him coming off a bye, of course. So Sam Darnold, start of the week for me.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a chance that he performs as poorly as Dak did. There's no way this Minnesota offense is going to look as discombobulated as the Cowboys do right now. Darnold is obviously going to be much better against Detroit, right? They're coming off their bye. They're going to be more prepared. And as much as I hate to bring this up, right, not having Hutchinson on the defensive line is going to radically alter how much pressure they can get. And he got hurt kind of later in the game. So I think the Vikings are in much better position here. Aaron Jones, I expect to play. He was out there on Monday. They did say it was more just like stretching. So stay tuned on his practice report this week. But overall, Darnold, elite weapons coming off a bye. I have him ranked 10 amongst quarterbacks this week. Going to my QB1 start is CJ Stroud. I do think he has left a little bit to be desired this year, right? I mean, we kind of had him as a guy that we didn't necessarily want to play last week. I had him kind of as a sit. He did pretty well against New England. Ended up throwing for 3 touchdowns, which, threw one to Mixon and had one to Dell and to Diggs. So basically as good of a performance as he could have had, but he only had 190 yards. So as much as I want to take a W on that, didn't really end up working out for me. But this week against Green Bay, I do think they're going to have to throw. They're going to have to keep up. Green Bay's offense is obviously great. Houston's defense, I don't want to sleep on them. So Green Bay's offense as a whole maybe limited a little bit this week compared to what they have been. But I do think Stroud is going to be competitive in this game. They're going to be throwing a lot. I do think having Mixon back is helping open up everything in the offense. And so I do expect that Stroud has a great week this week. And I do have him ranked at 8. So I would be starting him in 1 QB leagues. And obviously in your Superflex leagues, you can feel very confident about locking him into your starting lineup.
Yeah, I'm facing off against Stroud and Love in our Superflex league, and I am petrified because, like you said, this could turn into a potential shootout. And even though Houston's defense is very good, we know Love is going to sling it. He's not afraid to throw picks. So if he hits early, I mean, we could be looking at a very high point total. Side note, how jealous are you that your brother is going to this game?
Yeah, I know, right? God, he's got Stroud and Love in his league too. It's just like getting to watch both his quarterbacks face off. It's going to be a great game in Lambeau. So I'm very jealous that he's getting to fly out for that. It's going to be an awesome game.
It should be a good game for sure.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see Stroud in a good matchup where they're probably going to have to throw it a lot. So looking forward to that. All right, and then for QB1s, looking at the sits, we have Patrick Mahomes as your sit for the week.
Yeah, so I texted you before this. I don't even know if you consider Mahomes as a fantasy QB1 at this point. Like, he's finished every game between 13 and 16 fantasy points. So I guess he's been consistent, but that's definitely not what you drafted him for.
Consistently bad.
Yeah, right? It's like, ugh. And he does get the Niners this week, so maybe it turns into a little bit of a back and forth game where he has to throw a bit more, but I'm not really banking on that in 1 QB leagues where I mentioned with Darnold, like if he's available, I'm playing Darnold over him. There's a few other guys that I would definitely push up over Mahomes in this one. He's relying on Kelsey more. Juju looked good, but overall just not an inspiring group of weapons. I think they're going to try to run the ball quite a bit here. And again, he just hasn't had any games like even sniffing 20 points. So yeah, I just don't feel confident about him this week.
Yeah, so we'll see how this plays out, because the 49ers could end up doing pretty well on offense against the Chiefs. I know the Chiefs have a solid defense, but if they go out and they're up by 2 scores, maybe that forces Kansas City to throw the ball a little bit more than they were anticipating. He is coming off a 300-yard game, first one of the year. It's really been the touchdown to interception ratio. I mean, the fact that he's got 6 touchdowns and 6 picks is brutal for his fantasy value. I mean, no rushing touchdowns. He isn't rushing all that much. He hasn't topped 30 yards in a game this year. So it's just like it just feels like there's no floor here either, right? With, you're hoping from a guy like this that his floor is 17, 18, and he's scoring up in the 25s with some sort of regularity, but he's just not, right? Like you said, between 13 and 16 points. And unfortunately, against the 49ers defense, I'm just not sure that's where it's going to get better. Moving over to my QB1 sit for the week. This pains me, but it is Brock Purdy. So I did mention that maybe they get out to a 2-score lead, but I don't even know that happens. Kansas City's defense is very good in the secondary, very good front, stopping the run. So I just think this might be a difficult day on offense for the 49ers. The Kansas City Chiefs games have all been low scoring and kind of just trying to control the clock. And like you said, maybe they run the ball and it ends up to be like a 21-17 final from 2 teams that otherwise you would feel like should be able to get rolling on offense. But overall, Purdy's coming off a very good game against Seattle, right? 3 touchdowns. I don't think he's scoring 3 touchdowns this week against the Chiefs. Maybe 1 and then 1 rushing from the backfield, and then they're kicking field goals. So overall, Purdy's been a great quarterback. He's QB8 on the year, but I just don't think in this matchup that you can start him with as much confidence as you have been able to before. So like for me, I had Purdy ranked as QB5 last week, so that paid off pretty well. But this week, I'm not feeling as good about him. I have him at 11, and I'm debating pushing him even further down than that.
So who would you prefer to start in this game between he and Mahomes?
I would still start Purdy over Mahomes. I do have Purdy at 11, and I have Mahomes. I have Mahomes very poorly ranked at 18. So like you said, I'm not even sure if that's a QB1 conversation, but yeah, I have Mahomes all the way down at 18. So I would still be going Purdy. I still think the weapons are just way too hard to ignore. And Purdy's been throwing the ball down the field a lot more than we've seen in previous years. So I think, that there's at least a chance that they can hit a big touchdown. Maybe he gets 20 rushing, passing touchdown, 250 yards, and that's not going to get it done necessarily, but at least I think he can get up to like 17, 18 points a night. Yeah. Like we said, Mahomes hasn't topped that yet. And against this 49ers defense, I don't think that's going to be the week that Mahomes does it. All right, so moving into our QB2s. So our QB2 start of the week for you is Drake Maye. Alluded to it earlier in the video, but now we'll get into the analysis on Maye.
Yeah, so super stoked for Maye. I was kind of regretting pushing him over Jaden Daniels to start the pre-draft process, but now maybe not so much. We'll see how this turns out. Daniels is obviously,
let's not go crazy with
Daniels
that.
is well. Let's see how it plays out over a full year. But probably going to be wrong on that. But we'll see. But yeah, so Drake Maye's his first interception was a little bit shaky, but that happens though to rookie QBs. Although he did make a really awesome tackle on that, but then that 40-yard touchdown to Kayshon Boutte at the end of the first half was really nice against Derek Stingley too. It was encouraging for Drake Maye to see Boutte get going. If you're not familiar with him, he was a pretty highly touted prospect. He led LSU in receiving his freshman and sophomore years. Kind of fell off there at the end. He was like going to return to school, then went into the draft. Kind of fell in the draft a little bit, was a little bit lost last year, but is a very talented receiver. So with him and with how good Pop Douglas looked, and with the potential of Jalen Polk continuing to take a step forward, I think Drake Maye can be in a really good spot to finish off the year. He obviously had a good game. He finished with 3 touchdowns, 243 yards, had 2 picks, but like I said, only one of those was his fault. Got another 38 yards on the ground. Even more impressive that he did this against a pretty tough Texans defense. And this week he's got a great matchup against the Jaguars in London, who are probably just hanging out in London all week, eating fish and chips, waiting for Doug Peterson to get fired. We saw Drake Maye just throw 4 touchdowns against it, or we saw Caleb just throw 4 touchdowns against it. So I don't know. I think Drake Maye's in a really good spot this week. And if you're even in like a 1 QB league and you've got Dak on by, or you've got another guy who's got a tough matchup, maybe even like a Kyler Murray, and you want to just throw Drake Maye ahead of him and just bet on the young talent, like, I don't know if I could necessarily blame you given this matchup.
Yeah, and like for example, I have Maye straight up ranked ahead of Mahomes this week.
Yeah.
If I had the ability in a 1 quarterback league to go get Maye and just scoop it, start him over Mahomes, that's something that I would be doing this week. The other thing, you mentioned obviously Jacksonville, best matchup, right? That is just as good of a matchup as going to get. That's why I have him pushed up so high. Moving forward, he's not going to be ranked at 16 very often. But I will say with his touchdowns, right? Obviously he had his issues. It was his first game, threw a couple bad picks. Not really all that worried about that. His touchdowns, one of them came on a deep ball on the sideline, so he can throw the deep ball. One of them came in like a goal to go situation to Henry, close to the end zone touchdown. And then the other one was a Pop Douglas touchdown. It was 35 yards, but it was a catch and run, right? It was like an intermediate route for a touchdown. So seeing him work all three levels of the field to get scores, I was like, dang, wait, maybe he's a lot better of a passer than even I was thinking. If he cleans up his mistakes, which are going to come from a rookie, but the highs just looked like, whoa, this is different than what they were doing with percent. So I do like Maye this week specifically. So go ahead and get him into your starting lineups, especially in your Superflex leagues. If he hasn't been added, make sure you spend a lot of fab to get him onto your team. My start of the week for QB2s is Daniel Jones. I know he disappointed against Cincinnati. He didn't throw a touchdown. Their offense looked terrible. He threw a couple really bad balls. He had a couple bad picks, missed open receivers. It was weird. It was like he missed a couple throws early and all the confidence just drained. And they were trying to run the ball. The game was close, so they were trying not to make mistakes. I think Dable scaled back the playbook, trying not to make mistakes. But going up against Philly, I think they're not that good of a secondary. I think Philly is going to score a lot of points too. I know the Giants defense has been better than we expected, but I do think that Neighbors is going to be back in this game too. So hopefully that helps elevate his floor, can get into the end zone. And the other thing I really like to see out of Daniel Jones is he's got back-to-back weeks of 11 carries, and he went over 50 rushing yards last week. So if that's going to start to become more and more a thing, I think that just helps kind of elevate his floor even that much more. So I do have Daniel Jones pushed up really high this week. I have him as QB12 for the week, and somebody that I would be very confident starting against Philly.
So same question, Daniel Jones or Drake Maye for you this week?
Daniel Jones.
Okay. Yeah, I was a little disappointed with Jones against kind of an easier, not Cleveland, but a Cincinnati defense. But with Neighbors coming back, like that just elevates this whole team so much.
Yeah,
and opens up so much more for Wandell underneath too.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with Cincinnati. They were so bad to start the year, but then now all of a sudden their matchup isn't that bad. They're like middling, like top 13, I think, or 14th against quarterbacks now. So the last couple of weeks they've been pretty good on defense. So I don't know if that's like a scheme thing coming together as the season moves on, but they're not quite as easy of a matchup as we originally thought. And maybe that's also has to do with playing Daniel Jones, so that could be factoring in. But I think a rebound game here with getting Neighbors back too, I think is a major boost for the passing offense in general, and will take a lot of pressure off of Daniel Jones, a lot of pressure off of Darius Slayton. Concussions aren't linear, so Neighbors isn't guaranteed to be back, but I do think after missing 2 weeks that this is the week we're going to see Neighbors again. Moving into our QB2 sits, you have one that's kind of perennially on this video is Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, so Lawrence is coming off maybe a little bit better than expected fantasy week against the Bears. He did put up 17 points. He had 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. However, they were down 21-3, and when how bad their defense is and with how much Chicago was scoring on them, it was pretty much all garbage time. So I kind of take that performance with a little bit of a grain of salt. Obviously, Brian Thomas dropped that pretty bad touchdown. I mean, that he should have had that.
So
that was
pretty
Davis. Ridiculous. Yeah. And I don't know, just kind of a weird game for the Jags all around. Again, I just think this team is completely in shambles. Now they get the Patriots, who are an easier matchup defensively than the Bears. But like I said, Jags are deflated, and I think the Patriots are going to be playing with a little bit more optimism now that Drake Maye looks like the real deal. So maybe their defense steps up a little bit more too in this one. So sitting Trevor Lawrence in all formats this week.
Yeah, and I think for Lawrence too, if you do want to have a little bit of optimism, or you have to play him in your Superflex spot, they're going up against New England, so they should be able to move the ball with some sort of effectiveness, but also their running game has kind of like dried up. ETN's going to miss this game, I would guess, with injury. Bigsby didn't do much last week, and Dearness Johnson was on the field a lot in passing downs. So I don't know. The backfield is kind of in shambles right now, so they might lean on Lawrence for a little bit more rushing and just throwing the ball a lot more against New England. So I would temper expectations for Brian Thomas Jr. just because he's going to be going up against Christian Gonzalez. But overall, I think the rest of the offense maybe can help him out a little bit. And if you have to start him, maybe he can do that 17-point thing again that he did against the Bears last week. My sit kind of builds on the point I was making on Cincinnati, just because it's Deshaun Watson, right? Is my sit. So he goes up against Cincinnati this week. People might be thinking, oh, this is a good matchup. Like, let's get him in there. Well, like, what exactly were the Raiders? What exactly was Washington? Wasn't Philly supposed to be a decent matchup? Like, he has been awful all year. 12 points, 8 points, 8 points over the last 2 weeks. I don't even know if you could start him in your Superflex. Like, if you have a running back or somebody that, you're on your bench that's been producing decently well, I almost would consider going outside of the quarterback position if you need to, if you're that desperate and you have Watson, you don't have anybody else. It's getting to that point. Maybe you added Darnell Mooney off of the waiver wire early in the year, and you could play him over Watson. I would probably do that. Like, Wan'Dale Robinson is in the conversation. He'll have some extra attention off him. He's been averaging 10 targets a game. I don't know what else to say here. He just lost Amari Cooper. Like, that's not going to help. So, like, what exactly is going on here with Watson? I think he's like a complete sit. I think he's getting really close to, even in Superflex leagues, being a cut. Like, I think I'd rather just have Aiden O'Connell than him. I think I would rather I'd rather take a shot, maybe even on like Demario Douglas than him this week for a starting spot. So I don't know. I just, talk me off the ledge here. I just don't think there's really that much value left here.
Well, no, I mean, it's just like every week, like you said, we've been hearing like, oh, he's got this dream matchup. He's got this great matchup. Like, this is the week. He's going to put it together. They're throwing at the highest rate, like all of these things. And then he's just so bad that it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, I wish that they would go up against a very good defense and just watch him get absolutely crushed. And maybe that's what it's going to take for him to finally get benched. But like, dude, it's just brutal. And I would play Mooney over him this week too. At least it's fun. Like,
yeah,
I don't know, man.
Yeah, at least you have some confidence that he can do something. At least he has some upside. Like, at least he can get 100 yards in a score. At least he can get to 15 points. Like, I just don't think that's happening for Watson. And just it's unfortunate that he's so bad, and it's unfortunate that they won't bench him because of his contract. But Stefanski standing at the podium saying he's our best chance. It's like, dude, give me a break. Give me a break, dude. Don't patronize us and tell us that. Okay, that is absolutely false. There's no way you think that anybody else on your roster, specifically Winston, wouldn't give you a better chance to win. Just pissing me off, the whole Cleveland situation. All right, and kicking off the sleepers, we've got Matthew Stafford, your sleeper of the week.
Yeah, so he gets the Raiders this week, who are obviously not good on defense, and I would expect this to be a pretty heavy dose of Kyren Williams in this one. But there's also the slight chance that he gets Cooper Kupp back for this one, which would be a huge boost for Stafford's value. But even if Kupp doesn't play, they're coming off a bye. They're 1-4. This is pretty much a must-win game for the Rams. As a sleeper, of course, this is, if you're in a super flex league, let's say you just lost Justin Fields or you have Caleb Williams on bye, and you want to start someone who's actually good at playing quarterback versus like a Deshaun Watson, who we talked about, or like a Bo Nix.
Yeah.
So kind of just banking on the talent and the potential return of Cooper Kupp here.
Yeah, and Kupp coming back would be a huge boost for his value, I think. The unfortunate part about Stafford is obviously everybody got hurt, but he's also not been throwing touchdowns, right? It's been the Kyren Williams show on offense, especially when they're coming back, and even anywhere close to the goal line, they're just run. So it's been like 3 touchdowns and 3 picks this year for Stafford. Very disappointing scoring production, but this is obviously a great matchup. If he gets cut back, hopefully that'll help open up the offense overall. And, we might see multiple touchdown scores here this week. So if you're stuck and you're looking for somebody to play, get Stafford into your lineups. I have him currently ranked as quarterback 26, but I did that ranking with the impression that Kupp was going to miss. So if he does play, I think I'm going to push him all the way up into the top 20 I push him up over Anthony Richardson, which would get him to number 20. So I think, again, he could be a solid play with Kupp back. Obviously, Puka's not there yet, not really that close. So rest of season outlook still a little bit tentative here with Stafford, but I do really like where he's at for this week's matchup. My sleeper of the week is Aaron Rodgers. So I think this is going to be a fun matchup with getting Davante Adams, right? I mean, we didn't really touch on that because it's a quarterback episode, but Davante Adams is now a Jet, and I do think that that's really going to help Aaron Rodgers' value. Rest of the season especially, but even this week, I do expect that Adams is going to be a full participant in practice tomorrow. And I think he's going to be out there for a majority of the plays starting in his very first game here. So Rodgers, right, bad matchup. So that's why he's going to be ranked really lowly, right, against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers are looking like they're going to start Russell Wilson too. So maybe the Steelers get it going through the air a little bit, and this turns into a 27-24 game, a little bit more of a shootout than we would anticipate going into the week. But I do think the addition of Adams, it's just going to be a lot for the Steelers to handle on defense with Adams and Wilson out there. And I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be extra incentivized to do well with Adams out there in his first game. So, I don't know if they can win the game. They're in bad shape. They really need to win this game, though. Get back to 3-4, get themselves back into the division race, and knock off one of the teams in front of them too, right? I mean, it's not a lock that Pittsburgh's going to win their division, right? Because they do have the Ravens, who are likely to win that division. So if they knock off the Steelers, only one game back of them with the tiebreaker in the wild card situation. So this is a huge game for the Jets. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to rise to the occasion, and he's my sleeper for the week.
Yeah, I like that. I think Jets are going to win this game. I think he is so excited to have Davante Adams. I think he's staying at his house this first week. I think that he's going to get up to speed on the playbook. I think it's going to be really great for Rodgers. And, Lazard has played well. He's obviously has his issues with drops, but having Adams and Garrett Wilson as your top two weapons, guys that can get open quickly off the line. Rodgers likes to get it out quick. I think this is going to be really good for them. And, maybe we can kind of open up that can of worms with rest of season, how you're viewing him versus Wilson, how you're looking at Wilson long-term with this acquisition. Kind of what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I still like Wilson. I mean, I don't know. I've seen a lot of people being like, oh, Wilson's finally getting going. And then now, bummer, they traded for Adams. But yeah, I don't know if that's the case. Wilson operates in the slot a lot more. Like Lazard has been on the field a lot, right? I think this is going to basically nerf Lazard all the way into the ground. Like he's not even going to be ownable. But I don't know that it's going to affect Wilson all that much. Wilson is currently leading the league in targets, so I don't think that that's maybe going to continue. But that's being fueled on a 23 target game from last week. Yeah. So, I think that settling in around 9-10 targets is something that is still achievable for Wilson, while Adams is still able to command 9-10 targets. I think it's going to be very much a 1 and 1A situation. And the other thing with Wilson is it's not exactly like he started the year very well going up against really difficult number one corners. He's not going to see that anymore, right? It's going to be Adams that's going to be seeing those guys. And Adams is a unique talent where he's able to win against those matchups, maybe not all the time. But Wilson is going to be left to roam the field. And I think that almost might increase his efficiency, right? Because he's led the league in targets, still hasn't really had a true monster breakout game of efficiency-wise. So I don't know. It's hard for me to evaluate Wilson because I'm almost more excited about him now. I think the way Rodgers kind of locks on to 2 targets, maybe Breece Hall takes a little bit more of a step back in the passing game, but the way he's going to just load up Adams and Wilson with targets, I think is going to be good for Rodgers moving forward. I think he's a top 15 quarterback rest of season. And for both Adams and Wilson, I think Adams' value obviously shoots through the roof because he's going to just get funneled targets from Rodgers, which is a major step up from whoever was going to be playing quarterback for the Raiders. And Wilson, I think, is going to settle into a role where he should be able to get open much more frequently.
Yeah, I agree with that take. And I think the other thing to add, too, is just how much better the offense looked this last week when they changed play callers, too. So I'm pretty optimistic about that overall. I'm not 100% sure if I'm as excited about Wilson as you are, but fingers crossed because he's obviously a great talent and they can definitely coexist. I mean, look at Devontae Smith with AJ Brown on the other side. Like we see this all the time.
Yeah, and I know you have Wilson, so you're obviously feeling much more
A little
pessimistic
pinched.
about it,
Yeah.
right? You're just like, dude, like, come on, couldn't he have gone anywhere else? But I think just overall for the Jets offense too, like their ceiling now overall goes way up, right? I mean, it's just, I don't know. I feel like just the way they looked this past week, the offense looked much more in sync. Adding Adams to that to really open up and kind of have their boom weeks be up in the mid 30s in point totals instead of the low to mid 20s. I think it's just going to be positive for everybody. So I don't know. Also, it was so refreshing to see the play calling go back to Breece Hall. Like just load him up with targets. Like Braylon Allen, you are the backup. You're not going to be featured in this offense like he was like 2 or 3 weeks. So I think that too for Breece Hall owners should be a improvement. The offense is going to get better. That's an improvement for Breece Hall. I just think the Jets, everybody's trending up with Garrett Wilson maybe in a position where his targets are a little bit more constrained than they have been this year, but the efficiency should go up in a way that hopefully makes him a better receiver rest of the season anyways, because it's not exactly like he's been that good before the last 2 weeks. So in the last 2 weeks have obviously been awesome. I mean, it's literally elevated him back up into the top 10. He's currently wide receiver 9 on the season. So I think he's going to be fine is my point.
Yeah.
Moving on to our busts. So your first bust here is Kyler Murray, and I could not agree more.
Yeah, so Cardinals right now are kind of ugly to watch. I feel like every time I'm watching a Cardinals game, it just feels like they're turning it over a bunch. They haven't really been using Marvin Harrison Jr. in a lot of creative ways. I know he scored a decent amount of touchdowns in his first few games, but it just doesn't really feel like they've ever truly got him going. And he is probably going to miss this week.
Running.
Yeah, just kind of running down the sideline.
Up and down the sideline.
Yeah, and they're going to have Harrison miss this game with the concussion, right? And Kyler has not been putting up yards through the air. He's averaged under 200 yards per game passing. We know he's always the threat to hit the home run with his legs, but if that doesn't happen, I just don't really see a lot of upside in a game where their top target earner is likely to be their tight end. Week 4 against the Commanders, they were getting blown out. He only ran for 3 yards. He didn't do anything through the air. And that one last week against the Packers, he ran for 14 yards. So it's not like he's been super consistent on the ground. He's had a couple spike weeks, but other than those 2 games, he hasn't eclipsed 15 fantasy points. And he gets the Chargers this week, who are a very good defense overall. And if you buy into that thing where he sucks every time Call of Duty comes out, if he's got a new copy of the pre-release, like that could make his floor even lower. So I don't like Kyler Murray this week.
Yeah, so he announced his partnership with COD last week. And then goes out and scores 11 points on Green Bay and just doesn't run. And I don't know. The other thing with Kyler, he had that one game against the Rams where Marvin Harrison Jr. went off in the first half or first quarter. He literally had 130 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first quarter. Other than that, Kyler has been other than that one quarter, Kyler has been absolutely miserable as a passer. Like miserable. It's like every time I look up, I'm like, are we sure Kyler's good? Like it's just so annoying because you just look and it's like, dude, he is just sucking it up again as a passer. But I will say, even other than that one quarter as a passer, like he had that good game against SF. He had a 50-yard rushing touchdown. Mm-hmm. I get it, right? He's got that in his range of outcomes. When he does that, he's going to be good. But like, I don't want to be counting on that as the only way he's going to score. And that's kind of the only thing he's done. He's had that one quarter as a passer, and he had that one rushing play where he got free. And it's like, I don't know. He's rode those 2 things to a QB9 start overall. Yeah. So like, I get it if you're sitting here listening and being like, dude, Kyler's been fine. And it's like, yeah, because of a couple plays, really. Yeah. I mean, he's 3 plays away from being QB 25 probably. So I don't know. I struggle with Kyler going up against Chargers who play a ball control game. Arizona's defense is not good. J.K. Dobbins literally might get 30 carries in this game. And they might have the ball for 25 minutes. And if they start like they did against Green Bay, 3 and out, first down, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, that was their first 4 drives. They might be down to the Chargers 13-0, and it might be the end of the first half. So yeah, I don't know. This one is tough because like in a 1 quarterback league, you should sit him. In a 2 quarterback league, you don't have a choice, right? I mean, you drafted him high. He has been solid, right? We've mentioned QB9, but I agree. Kyler is just really tough to figure out right now. No Marvin Harrison Jr. in this game. He's going to miss with a concussion, I would guess. we'll get information on that as we get closer. But I don't think anybody has come back the following week from a concussion yet this season.
I don't think so.
I don't think Marvin Harrison's playing in this game. All things lining up for Kyler to just have a down week. The last guy we're going to talk about here, and my bust of the week, and it pains me, and it's almost as bad as your call on Jaden Daniels last week, but my bust of the week is Baker Mayfield. So it's tough to go in on the number 2 overall quarterback. He just passed Jaden Daniels in total points for the year, and he just dropped back-to-back 28, 23, 25-point weeks against Philly, Atlanta, and New Orleans. The matchup hasn't mattered. He has been unbelievable. He has one bad week against Denver where he just didn't get it going. Every other week is above 18.5 points. And there's been just some massive weeks here. I mean, he's got 3 weeks over 25 points out of 6. He has been, there's no other way to say it other than he's been phenomenal. So if you have him, you're likely starting him. But against Baltimore this week, I just think that there's a chance that they aren't able to move the ball as well. And I think Baltimore is going to have a lot of success moving the ball against Tampa Bay on the ground. And Baltimore's defense, for as bad as they were, again, kind of like Cincinnati to start the year, they were terrible against the pass. Then they've kind of started to, plug some of the holes in the dam here. And it's been a lot more difficult for these teams to pass on them. Jaden Daniels didn't do that well last week, right? We talked about 20 points being like a W for your bust call, and he had 20 points. So, I don't know that Baker has any sort of rushing upside to kind of meet the moment like Daniels did. And I'm afraid here that, that Baltimore ends up kind of shutting them down in a way that maybe he gets only 18 points, right? 17 points. And for how he's been playing, I think that's a good enough call for a bust. And I'm not exactly as enthusiastic to play him as I have been in past weeks.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I have a hard time doubting Baker this year at all.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not going to be for lack of opportunities in this game. Like, you cannot run on Baltimore, so he's going to throw it a lot. So again, I get it. They've improved their defense. And, we talked about that with Baltimore earlier on in the season, where it's like their offensive line is a mess. Their pass defense isn't good, but good coaches figure it out. And I think that's obviously the case with Harbaugh and the Ravens too. So I think they're going to continue to improve and ascend. Derrick Henry's going to get a bunch of carries in this game. Like, I see the vision with that. And then, maybe I turn on the TV Sunday and it's 21-21 in the second quarter. I'm like, God, crap, shouldn't have doubted Baker.
Yeah. Which is probably what's going to happen. Baltimore is still, you look at the matchup, and Baltimore is still in the bottom 10 against quarterbacks, right? He's got a clean matchup this week. You're probably locking and loading him, thinking he's about to go off again. And the reason I picked him is because I'm just not so sure that's the case. I will say, I still have him ranked at 7 at quarterback. I still have him ranked over CJ Stroud. Like, I just am tempering my expectations here and wanted to bring attention to it in this bust case. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll be back with you guys tomorrow on the wide receivers. If you want our rankings, comment down below rankings and leave a comment if you have any other quarterbacks that you think are going to do really well this week or not so well. Look forward to talking to you guys in the next one.
Later.